Have you ever felt it? That sudden, inexplicable shift in the atmosphere. The air grows heavy. The fine hairs on your arms stand on end. It's a primal instinct, a legacy from a time when our ancestors huddled in caves, listening to the sounds of the darkness outside. We tell ourselves we're safe now. We tell ourselves the monsters are gone, relegated to fairy tales and horror movies. But we're wrong. They never left. They just learned to hide in the shadows of our modern world. They learned to watch. Tonight, we are not telling you stories. We are taking you into the rooms where the nightmares became real. We are handing you the accounts of ordinary people who stumbled through a tear in our reality and came face to face with the occupants of the void. These are not legends. These are not campfire tales. These are first-hand testimonies, shared in the quiet, desperate corners of the internet, from people who just want someone to believe them. They are called by many names: shadow people, the Greys, the visitors. But one figure appears again and again, a recurring phantom in a global shared nightmare. A tall, slender silhouette of a man, distinguished by one single, terrifying detail: a hat. This Watchers in the dark. Our first journey into this phenomenon takes us back to the formative years of a young person, a time that should be defined by discovery and growth, not by ancient, creeping dread. This account was shared by a Reddit user known only as Cynical on the R Paranormal board. Their story is a classic, terrifying introduction to an entity that does not forget. This is their story. Imagine you are 16. Your bedroom is your kingdom, your sanctuary. The walls are plastered with posters. The floor is a landscape of discarded clothes, and the air smells of teenage ambition and late-night snacks. The digital clock on your nightstand glows a defiant red. 3:17 a.m. You are deep in sleep, lost in a meaningless dream, when something pulls you back to consciousness. Not an alarm, not a noise. It's a feeling, a cold, heavy certainty that you are no longer alone. Your eyes snap open. The room is bathed in the faint, ethereal glow of the moon filtering through your window blinds. Everything is where it should be. The desk, the chair, the pile of books. But you can't move. Your body is a dead weight, pinned to the mattress by an invisible force. Your brain is screaming, but your limbs are silent. This is sleep paralysis, a simple, terrifying glitch in the brain's transition between sleep and wakefulness. You know the term. You've heard the explanation. But knowing the science does nothing to quell the primal animalistic terror that is flooding your veins like ice water. You're lying on your side, facing the closed door to your bedroom, and in the sliver of darkness beneath the door, you see it. A shadow, deeper than the natural darkness. It's not a shadow cast by anything in the room. It is a patch of pure, absolute void. Your heart hammers against your ribs. A frantic, panicked drum solo against the suffocating silence of the room. You try to scream, to force even a tiny squeak from your paralyzed throat. But the effort is swallowed by the invisible weight on your chest. The shadow under the door, it's moving. It's not sliding. It's rising. Slowly, impossibly, a form begins to coalesce in the darkness. It rises from the floor, a three-dimensional silhouette detaching itself from the blackness. It's tall, unnaturally so, its head nearly brushing the top of the doorframe. It is the shape of a man, but there is no substance to it, only a perfect light-absorbing blackness. And as your eyes, wide with a terror that transcends words, struggle to comprehend what they are seeing, You see the detail that will be seared into your memory for the rest of your life. On top of its head is the distinct, unmistakable shape of a wide-brimmed hat, a fedora. He is just standing there. On the other side of your door, a silent, spectral guardian of the threshold between your room and the rest of the house. Watching you, time loses all meaning. Seconds stretch into eternities. You are locked in a silent, one-sided interrogation. This entity, this hat man, is studying you. There is an intelligence in its stillness that is far more terrifying than any threat of violence. It is a cold, curious, malevolent intelligence. It sees your fear. It is drinking it in. You feel like a specimen under a microscope, an insect pinned to a board, utterly helpless and exposed. The pressure on your chest intensifies. It's not just paralysis anymore. It feels like a physical presence, a weight pushing down, trying to crush the life out of you. You close your eyes, a desperate, futile attempt to block it out. But you can still feel it. You can feel its gaze burning through your eyelids. And then, as suddenly as it began, the spell shatters. With a desperate, ragged gasp, you suck in a lungful of air. You sit bolt upright, your body finally, miraculously, yours again. Your eyes are fixed on the door. It's still closed. The room is empty. The hallway beyond is empty. You scan every corner, every shadow, your heart still trying to beat its way out of your chest. Nothing. He's gone. But the feeling of his presence lingers in the air like a toxic fog, a cold spot that refuses to warm. You know what you saw. You know it wasn't a dream, and a horrifying, soul-crushing thought settles into your mind. This wasn't the first time. And you know, with a certainty that chills you to the bone, that it will not be the last. The Hat Man has marked you, and he will be back. A single terrifying visitation is enough to break a person's spirit, a recurring nightmare that returns to your doorway, a silent observer in the dark. But what happens when the horror isn't content to be a visitor? What happens when it doesn't just stand in the doorway, but walks right into your life? What happens when the entity that invades your sleep paralysis isn't content to just watch from a distance? Our next account explores a far more intimate violation. It's a story that proves the true terror isn't always what you see from across the room, but what you don't see when it's standing right beside you. This story, shared by Reddit user Throwaway927 on the R Paranormal subreddit, details a sleep paralysis encounter that attacks not just with fear, but with a visual that shatters the very fabric of reality. The narrator was an adult, fighting a losing battle against a mountain of work. Exhaustion was a constant companion, a heavy cloak they couldn't shrug off. On this particular night, the body finally surrendered. They didn't even make it to the bedroom. They collapsed onto the living room couch, still fully clothed as the storm raged outside. The rhythmic, drumming sound of the rain against the window pane was the last thing they remembered before being pulled into a deep, dreamless sleep. Then, the familiar, horrifying sensation. The eyes flutter open, but the body remains a statue. The living room is cast in the gray, oppressive light of a stormy pre-dawn. The rain is still a relentless torrent against the glass, but something is wrong. The air feels thick, charged with a static energy that makes the skin crawl. The presence isn't across the room. It's not at the door. It's right there, beside the couch. You can't turn your head to see it, but you can feel it as surely as you feel the pounding in your own chest. It's a cold spot in the air, a sudden drop in temperature that has nothing to do with the rain. It's the sheer, oppressive weight of another consciousness, so close, so intimate. It feels like it's occupying the same space as you. Fighting against the neurological prison of your own body, you manage to shift your gaze. Your eyes roll to the side, straining in their sockets, desperate for a glimpse of the source of this terror. And you see him. He's standing there, no more than a few feet away. He's wearing a simple, dark suit, the kind a businessman would wear. In the dim light, he looks almost normal. Almost. But as your focus sharpens, a new, more profound horror dawns on you. It is not a shadow. It is not an absence of light. It is a smooth, featureless, uninterrupted surface of skin. A blank canvas where eyes, a nose, and a mouth should be. It is the most fundamentally, cosmically wrong thing you have ever seen. Your mind reels, screaming in protest, trying and failing to process the sheer impossibility of it. A man, in a suit, standing in your living room, with no face. He leans in closer. You can feel the air shift as he moves, a subtle displacement that sends a wave of nausea through you. You expect an attack, a touch, a sound, but he does nothing. He simply brings that horrifying, smooth expanse of a face closer to yours, as if to inspect you, to study the terror in your eyes. The fear is no longer about the paralysis. It's about the incomprehensible, reality-breaking wrongness of the entity that is sharing your space. You are trapped, staring into an abyss where a human face should be. And in that horrifying blankness, you feel a cold, ancient, and utterly alien intelligence. It's not just observing you. It's savoring your fear. It's feeding on it. And then, a twitch. A single finger on your left hand moves. A tiny spark of control. The paralysis is breaking. With a final, monumental surge of will, you wrench your head away and squeeze your eyes shut. You lie there, trembling, for what feels like an eternity, before daring to open them again. He's gone. The rain is still falling. The room is empty, but you are left with the indelible image of that smooth, silent void, a permanent scar etched onto your soul. You don't go back to sleep. You just sit there in the gray light of the storm, and you wonder if you will ever be able to close your eyes again without seeing him. The man with no face, a violation of the mind, a personal, intimate horror that leaves no physical marks, but scars the soul forever. The man with no face is a testament to the fact that these entities can invade the most sacred space we have, our own consciousness. But what happens when the horror isn't content with a single terrifying visit? What happens when it moves in? When it stops being a visitor and becomes a resident? Our next journey takes us into a home that was no longer a sanctuary, but a territory shared with the darkness. A family that learned to live with the unlivable, giving them a name that has since become a chilling legend. This account comes from Reddit user Grim Author, who shared a childhood memory that wasn't a single event, but a long, drawn-out haunting. They called them the Shadow People. The narrator's family moved into an old, two-story house when they were very young. To a child, it was a place of wonder. Creaky floorboards were secret passages, and the dusty attic was a forgotten kingdom. At first, the strange occurrences were easy to dismiss, brushed off as the quirks of an aging home. A flicker of movement in the corner of your eye, a shadow that seemed to dart down the hall the moment you entered a room. The narrator, young and imaginative, paid it no mind. It was just the house. But the family dog, a loyal and friendly golden retriever, was not so easily fooled. It was the first to sense the change in the atmosphere. The narrator would often find the dog standing at the bottom of the stairs, its body rigid, a low, guttural growl rumbling in its chest. It would be staring up at the empty landing, its hackles raised, its tail tucked tightly between its legs, a picture of pure, animalistic terror. At something no one else could see, the sightings became more frequent and more direct. The narrator would see them standing in doorways, just like in our first story. They were always humanoid, but made of a smoke-like, shifting darkness. They had no discernible features, no faces, no clothes. They were just shadows, but they moved with an unnatural, silent purpose, gliding along the walls where no light was being cast. The breaking point came one evening. The entire family was in the living room, watching TV, a rare moment of normalcy. The narrator's mother got up to go to the kitchen to get a drink. A moment later, her voice cut through the sound of the television. It wasn't a scream of terror, but a short, sharp gasp of pure shock. Everyone rushed in. She was standing by the sink, her face pale, her hand pointing a trembling finger at the far corner of the kitchen. And there it was, one of the figures. It was taller than a man, unnaturally thin and spindly, a three-dimensional void in the dimly lit room. It didn't move. It just stood there, a column of absolute darkness, seeming to absorb the light around it, making the corner of the room appear darker than it should be. The father, in a desperate act of bravado fueled by fear for his family, grabbed a large kitchen knife from the block. "Get out of my house," he yelled, his voice trembling but defiant. He took a step towards the shadow. The entity didn't react. It didn't flee. It didn't even seem to acknowledge him. It simply dissolved. It didn't walk away or fade into the wall. It collapsed in on itself, like smoke being violently sucked into a vacuum, and was gone in an instant. There was no sound, no trace, just an empty corner. That was the night the family stopped pretending. They weren't just dealing with creaks and drafts. They were sharing their home with something else. They started calling them the Shadow People, a name that felt both childish and terrifyingly accurate. From then on, the encounters became more aggressive. They would feel cold spots on their skin as they walked down the hall. They wake up in the middle of the night with the overwhelming feeling of being watched, only to see a shadow detaching from the wall and disappearing into the floor beneath their bed. The family lived in that house for 2 more years, in a state of constant low-grade fear. They never felt safe. They were never truly alone. They were simply cohabitating with the watchers in the dark, accepting them as a horrifying part of their daily lives. A family learns to adapt, to live with a horror that has become a part of their home. They build a new kind of normal around the shadows. But there is perhaps no greater fear than the fear for your child. The innocence of a child is a sacred shield, and when that shield is pierced by something from the darkness, the horror is magnified 1,000 times. Our final story tonight is from a parent, a father who thought his son's imaginary friend was just a product of a vivid imagination. He was wrong. It's a story about a name whispered by a child, the tall man in the yard, and the chilling moment. A father realized the nightmare was real, and it was standing right outside his window. This account was posted by Reddit user Jaded Geologist on the Our Humanoid Encounters subreddit. The narrator's son, a bright and imaginative 4-year-old, had an imaginary friend. At first, it was charming, a normal part of childhood. The friend had no name, but the son would often talk about him. The tall man, he called him. He lives in the yard, the son would say. He's very shy. The parents would smile and nod, happy their child had such a vivid imagination. But the description started to become more specific and more unsettling. "The tall man is so tall," the son said one day at dinner, his face completely serious. "Taller than the house, and he wears a hat. The son added a few days later, presenting a drawing. It was a crayon scribble of a tall black stick figure with a large black triangle on its head. It was the kind of drawing any parent would stick on the fridge, but the way the son described it, with a strange, matter-of-fact seriousness, it began to bother the father. "He doesn't talk, Daddy," the son whispered one night during his bedtime story, his voice barely audible. "He just watches. He watches me play. Nyun." The father's parental concern began to curdle into a slow, creeping dread. He started checking the yard every single night. He'd walk the perimeter of the fence, a powerful flashlight in hand, but he never found anything. No footprints, no signs of anyone being there. He told himself it was just a phase, a product of a young, developing mind. But then, the son's behavior changed. He stopped wanting to play in the backyard, a place he once loved. He would often stand by the window, staring out, his face pale and withdrawn. "He's closer tonight, Daddy," he'd say, his voice trembling. One evening, the father was tucking his son into bed. The room was dark, save for the faint, warm glow of a small nightlight shaped like a star. The son was quiet, unusually so. He clutched his father's arm tightly, his small body tense. "What is it, buddy?" the father asked softly. The son didn't answer. He just slowly raised his small hand and pointed a trembling finger towards the window. The father followed his son's gaze. He looked out the window into the dark, sprawling yard. At the very edge of the property, where the manicured lawn met the dark, imposing tree line, stood a figure. It was impossibly tall and unnaturally thin, a stark black silhouette against the even darker woods. And on its head, there was no mistaking it, was the shape of a wide-brimmed hat. It was just standing there, perfectly still, watching the house, watching the window, watching the room where his son slept. The father felt a cold dread wash over him, a terror so profound it was paralyzing. He wanted to look away, to scream, to grab his son and run. But he was frozen, locked in a silent, horrifying exchange with the figure in the yard. Every rational part of his brain screamed that this was impossible, but his eyes told him it was real. And then, as if it knew it had been seen, the figure took a slow, deliberate step back and melted into the shadows of the trees. It didn't turn and walk. It simply was no longer there. The father never told his wife what he saw, but he knew. The imaginary friend was real. The tall man was real, and he was watching his son. The nightmare wasn't in his son's head anymore. It was right outside their window, waiting in the dark. From the recurring phantom of the Hat Man, who marks you and returns to your doorway, to the faceless horror that invades your personal space, a violation of the mind, to the family that lived with shadows, accepting them as a horrifying part of their daily lives. These stories are a chilling reminder that the veil between our world and theirs is thinner than we'd like to believe. They are a testament to the shared human experience of fear and the terrifying possibility that in the dark, we are not the masters of our own domain. The Watchers are real, and they are waiting. So the next time you feel a chill in a sealed room, the next time you see a shape move in the corner of your eye, or the next time your child tells you about a friend you can't see, ask yourself, are you truly alone? If you have a story of your own, a true encounter with the Watchers in the dark, we want to hear it. Share your story in the comments below. Your experience could be part of our next episode. And if you enjoyed this deep dive into the shadows, make sure to like and subscribe for more episodes of Watchers in the Dark. Be careful what you look for in the dark. You might just find it.